The business currently known as Clear used to formerly be known as ClearTax. It started out in 2011 as a minimal, sleek, and blazingly fast website to help Indians file taxes. Today, it does much more than just people's taxes. Even though its overwhelming market leadership means competitors are just rounding errors, according to Archit Gupta, the company's co-founder and CEO. I went into my conversation with Archit with a line from Clear's website saying its platform handled over $300 billion worth of business invoices each year. He told me the figure was a bit outdated. By how much? It was $600 billion and not $300 billion. Hello and welcome back to another wonderful episode of First Principles, the leadership podcast from the Ken. I'm Rohin Dharmakumar, your host, and this is episode 24. Operating largely below the funding and valuation radars of 2020 to 2022, Clear has been quietly effecting a business model pivot under Archit's leadership. Today, it is overwhelmingly a business-to-business focused company and not a business-to-consumer one. As India digitises and formalises its tax systems together, Clear has ridden both waves to help businesses and consumers stay compliant. But this transition hasn't been quick or easy, as Archit candidly opens up about in our conversation. We talk about his evolution, unlearning, and remaking as a CEO seeking to build a profitable and lasting company. Why he turned from a business-focused to a product-focused CEO about a year ago. Why being misunderstood as a business has helped Clear stay under the radar and play the long-term game. How much of a cultural shift it took for Clear to start charging its customers to file taxes. Why Archit decided to expand from India to Saudi Arabia. Why passion for excellence, curiosity, and ambition are the three markers he looks for in people, all else being noise. Stay on to keep listening. I take deep comfort in being wrong and misunderstood. Archit, you once said this in an interview around 2020. What have you been wrong and misunderstood about lately?
Great question and great start. So, where have I been wrong? More recently, we've been wrong lots of times. So I think it's that one's easy. More recently was around I would say monetizing the consumer business. Like our chief business officer drove the company into monetizing the consumer business, and the kind of price points that he was talking about, the rest of the company didn't imagine. So over there,
to be clear, you're talking about asking those who file taxes through ClearTax to
free.
Pay for it.
Yes, for the first time we said like we'll charge for it, and given that,
and you're saying you were wrong about it, and most of the company was wrong about it because you weren't doing it.
I think the pricing power we had and the monetization scope we had, that is what I was wrong about. I think we were very convinced in the core team that like we have to charge for it. Like we have to turn that business line profitable, and so that we can continue investing. Otherwise, it would have been a sharp, deep cut because running the business with no revenue was not an option for us anymore. But
I want to come back to this question later because I do have it for you. But for now, what was the price point that you thought would be appropriate, and what was the price point that your chief business officer said?
Right. So it has been an evolution. I think the consensus price point was around maybe 400 rupees, but the emergent price point was more close to 1,000 rupees. So a pretty big delta.
And what do you currently charge?
1,000, right? Like, so average pay it has a full spread. So the other place I was wrong was our Middle East expansion started with Saudi Arabia, and to me, we did not have perspectives and understanding of that country at all, and we thought the right country to probably start is maybe the UAE. It's slightly more business friendly from a perspective that we had at that time. In like the and over there also choosing Saudi Arabia was right. So again, like an area I was wrong, but turned out to be just fine in hindsight. So wrong on that, misunderstood. Uh, I think as our opportunity continues to be misunderstood, I think that's great because we then tend to attract less competitors. We then tend to like when I look at some of these indexes which track SaaS companies, we don't show up, although our revenue will be pretty material to show up, and so on and so forth. So people mostly think we are a consumer tax company, and they mostly don't understand that we do B2B SaaS and we do it globally. So I think that would be the simplest level of misunderstanding of our business.
And that suits you because you're saying it allows you to stay under the radar.
Yeah, we prefer it like that. We just prefer to work on, I would say, what are hard problems, what are generally perceived as unsexy problems. And it gives us time to build things right, because I've seen when there is either an insane growth pressure driven by, let's say, circumstances, then we take the wrong shortcuts, and then I've seen some founders forced to take shortcuts when the competitive landscape and dynamic drives that behavior. So we have had it's the second part, we've had the luxury of not having the wrong kind of competitors. We do have competition, just to be sure, but we can talk about that. But the misunderstanding part
is today's day and age for you to not have any competition. Can you explain what clear is in a few lines, in a way that my 13-year-old son could understand?
We simplify taxes for individuals and businesses so that they can focus on their primary work, and technology can take care of like anything they need to deal with the government on with regards to how a business should be run or how individuals need to deal. The simplest 13-year-old articulation.
On your website, you say $300 billion worth of business-to-business invoices flow through Clear each year. What does that mean?
So now the number is 600 billion. So what that means
your
is...
marketing team will be hearing this and they'll be hearing that figure has not been updated in a while.
In a while, yes. So basically what that means is, so this is a big trend and big change in the world which is happening. Governments across the globe are saying like... are driving two big changes. One is they want to digitize every B2B or every transaction where there's an invoice. Why are they doing that? Two reasons. One, they are saying we want our fair share of taxes. Second, we want digitization because it leads to very good second order effects. The good second order effects are countries move from paper to digital, and there is a digital trail on which financial services, most importantly working capital, lending and access to capital can happen. So these are national mandates. The primary first order is getting more tax revenue. And in indirect taxes, which is generally VAT or sales tax or GST, there's a historically massive amount of tax evasion by small and medium businesses, because sometimes the tax amount is more than the margin itself on the product or the service. I think all of us are familiar.
And we know this because shopkeepers would ask, do you want an invoice or no invoice? And the price would differ based on whether you want an invoice or not, which effectively is the pricing, the tax into the equation.
Precisely. And so in commodities, like just the tax difference is enough to make margin. So it's entire entire economies run in the shadow part of our country and many countries and many parts of and the smaller businesses do take that as an arbitrage, especially mom and pop globally. It's not a India only phenomena. India, obviously, we are very sophisticated in tax evasion. Used to be. Now with GST, I think.
And this movement is what's referred to as formalization. So it's digitization plus formalization as well.
Right. So both are chicken and egg. Basically, formalization does happen without digitization sometimes, but countries like India, which generally approach a very low trust model. So India's decided the least trust model. We don't trust anybody. You have to write to the National Digital Ledger, which the GSTN maintains, and every business has to create an electronic invoice. They have to create it real time if it's a B2B transaction. B2C, they have to report it once a month to the government at the end of the month. So this is super critical, and this is the change globally. So we entered Saudi Arabia because they decided all B2B and B2C transactions have to be electronically invoiced. So many countries across the world are moving to this. So, and we fortunately stumbled into this when we started doing GST for India and then electronic invoicing for India. And India said like way bills have to also be done because we removed toll booths, not toll booths, the checking booths. And the way bills have a QR code and trucks can move. So different countries have slightly different implementations and they use it for different purposes. India uses it for movement of goods, taxes, tax evasion, and so on and so forth. And more countries across the world are moving to this real-time digital invoice.
But to go back to my question, when you say $600 billion worth of invoices move through Clear, what does that mean?
So at the point of sale or at the point of invoice creation, our technology will be used for creating that electronic invoice.
So that means that people are using Clear software.
Software or API. So either or, like they could be using our web-based GUI, or they could be using their ERP system or point of sale solution and hitting our APIs. This in turn writes to the government ledger, and then the ledger settles every month for every business, so that if I invoice to you, for example, and you're a business, I am a business, you get tax credits next month and then you have to pay less taxes. But if I don't write about you into that national ledger, you have to pay more taxes. So you will force me that, hey, I need that valid invoice. So basically, then you'll see every checkout form in e-commerce, they ask you, right, like which GSTN, so that you can take those tax credits. So that is the 600 billion that I'm referring to.
You're the number one GST, I mean, again, going by your own this thing, right? You're the number one GST platform for enterprises, and you're also the number one income tax platform for individual taxpayers. We'll come to this later because you had started out originally as a site focused only on individual taxpayers, and then you've kind of pivoted to it. But before I move on from this, just very intrigued by this one claim in there, which again, if it's updated, please tell me, which is 1,000 crores worth of taxes saved per year. What does that mean?
Right. So essentially, this is the calculation of the tax savings people have done on the platform by declaring their taxes. So we track two numbers: how much tax are people saving, whether it is ATC, ATD, all the sections across. And the second one we track is how much taxes are people paying. So these two numbers, I think we track, and I think that's where the 1,000 crore number is coming from.
How does Clear make money?
So a very simple business model, nothing complex in there. We charge a subscription fee from either individual consumers or businesses. So basically software as a service. And on the consumer side, we charge it right now as just before filing, you can prepare the tax return for free. And then once you decide to submit to the government, then we charge a small fee for you to finish the transaction. And that's on the consumer side. On the B2B side, you have to pay to buy a license, an annual subscription typically. And then you either pay us annually, monthly, or quarterly, depending on the contract. And basically,
and that's
software
a function
as a
of volume.
Generally,
right.
a function of the the amount, the SaaS fee. So basically, very very simple business model. And we recently bought a company called Expedise, which does invoice discounting on the supply chain. And we can talk about it. We've now
Which is basically a business trying to borrow money based on the dues of
so if you have an
customers.
invoice out and it's net 30, net 45,
Sure.
net 60, and then you can get paid early, so you get access of your trade receivable fast. So that company we bought, so over there we earn some small bips on the transaction. So that's the additional
Basis
business
points.
model, but it's a very new business for us.
Bips being basis points.
Basis points, yes, sorry, basis points on the transaction. But like 99.5% of our business will be the SaaS fee. So I think for the 13-year-old listening, it's the SaaS fee, software as a service fee, that is our business.
You started in 2011.
That's right.
Right. And for the longest time, you didn't charge to file taxes.
1 decade, 10 years.
Right. And then one fine day, you decided to charge for filing taxes. Now, I'm assuming that between the first 10 years and then subsequently, your software didn't dramatically change. Right? You must have always upgraded and added new features, but the decision to charge was not a function of, hey, the software is now something fundamentally different.
Right.
But instead, I see it as a function of, like you said, we have the ability to charge, and more importantly, consumers might pay us for this. So what was that change? Because as a layman, it looks as though over time, unlike other countries, for instance, like the US, where the tax code is very complex, in India, it has become simpler to file taxes. Forms have been simplified. The government's own portals, etc., have been simplified, right? And yet, you have the ability to charge customers to do that. What is that? Like, why do people pay ClearTax to file or any competitor when they could do it for free?
Right. That's a great question. And that's the question that's been the central dilemma. The company, certain people inside, pros and cons, right? Like, you are bottling something which is available for free, right? Like, it's that free water versus like...
and you're the folks who made it free in the first place, right? If there's one brand which is representative for easy and quick filing of taxes in India, it's ClearTax.
Yes, exactly. So I think, so I'll have to unpack the question in 3-4 pieces, right? And I want to separate the do it yourself versus do it for me. I think the do it for me has always been paid. We have also charged a small fee for it since the beginning. And
if you want to use a CA to file, and many
a
people...
tax expert, yeah.
That's
and
right.
You can go to your own tax expert if you have one. If you don't have one, we'll give you one kind of model. And that has been always a small part of our business. And we have offered it to complete the offering, but we always believed very deeply that the DIY market is underserved, and that is what we need to power and we need to service. So on the DIY side, we started free, and obviously one of the goals was in the past was, okay, we can find a way to cross sell this, we can find a way to create this as a funnel to something else, and so on and so forth. I think once the B2B business started, we never got the time to build that something else. On the consumer side, we figured that I'll first describe the motivation for a few minutes, and then we'll describe why there is pricing power.
Sure.
So the motivation was, we needed to invest in this business so that we continue to create a good offering and good product. Now, the reason for that was there is investment needed to keep the tax code updated and so on and so forth. The reason for that is the millennials and Gen Zs are evolving very rapidly. I think COVID era pushed people into a lot more stock trading, a lot more...
so the tax filings are much more complex.
Much more complex, right?
It's no longer just income from salaries
Form 16 and
Form
what have you.
16.
And people switch jobs much more. I think the real estate / gold being the dominant way to make money, invest has completely changed. I think that has been a significant evolution from when we started 10 years ago. I think the power users were using these features, but now 38% people end up using a more interesting tax form and with more income sources. And so maybe that number started at
38% relative to what? The default?
to our
like,
total user base, like 38% would be
38% of people opted to pay for
opted to
finding?
use a more complex version
than
of the product
Okay.
than just that form 60 in the
Got it.
So I first want to start with, like, maybe when we started a decade ago it was 8%. So the evolution of people who were just doing a simple tax return to now people having many more sources of income.
Complexity of income and taxes has gone up from roughly 8% when you started to 38%
Now where where people have either they have trading, they have mutual funds, they have what have you. So I think that's a big evolution and big change in the dynamics of income sources and the diversity. And earlier people just doing real estate and gold changing, right? So I think that's one big thing. Second is us having a business model around this business. So these were our internal motivations, because we saw like the investment it takes to update a high quality DIY product is quite a bit. We have to have a high quality engineering team. We have to pay them fairly. Market salaries also for engineers has gone up meaningfully. I think everybody on the show would be aware. So so now coming to the charging for a free product and the dynamic, I think there is a certain kind of user which can deal with the government portal and the complexity. I think our primary competitors are twofold. One is you do it yourself on the government portal, you do it yourself at ClearTax, or you go to a chartered accountant or a tax expert, depending on their qualification. This is it. The other competitors are rounding errors. They are not relevant. So the do-it-yourself audience splits into two parts. One is they're okay with the complexity and dealing with a very complex portal, despite the fact that there is a new tax regime, despite the fact that there is theoretically you can file a ITR1 by yourself with the government. I think there's enough of an audience which needs simplicity, which is willing to pay the 400 to 500 rupees we charge, and which has now, because of, I guess, Amazon, Swiggy, Zomato and what have you, is okay with paying that 400 or 500 rupees once a year for this service. So I think the evolution of the Indian internet has also happened. I think people are aware that they can pay for something, UPI is there. So I think we are on the dividend of all the work the other internet folks have done to make users pay for transactions. So I think this year we found no resistance on paying for transactions. The second part is, I think we were just dealing with the mindset shift of our own customer base saying, ये तो free होता था, this used to be free, why should I pay for this? So I think the whole mindset shift of our customers to our customers is the thing we are dealing with, that like something which was perceived free has become paid. But I think once they get past that grief, then they go and pay the 400 rupees or 500.
But from what you're saying, that should be all right, because if that number of people who have, I think, additional/complex income has gone up from 8 to 38%, people generally don't mind paying an additional fee if you've made more money and you're filing taxes for it.
So right? I think it's unclear whether they've made more money on I think like, because most people in trading lose money. I think almost 99% people lose money while trading stocks or trading options. So I think it's unclear whether they made money or lost money, especially in crypto. Most people lost money. But I think the more interesting takeaway is that over there, the quality of our product, the DIY product, is head and shoulders above anything that exists out there. So, and there's no critique to any offering by the government or what have you. We just have like obsessed on it and done it better. So I think over there, our product craft shows. Over there, the quality of the product is head and shoulders above. So we have integrations with all major brokers, API integrations and what have you. One-click data is pulled in. This product is so good that chartered accountants also use this a lot. I believe like 25,000 chartered accountant firms in the country use our product for these capital gains and other things. So overall, I would say over there is no resistance. Like over there, it's a no-brainer. Customers are happy to pay. The NPS is very high. It's the segment which you said, right? Like single form 16 and what have you. Over there, it's mixed. I think the government is much bigger than us. And then as users get more complex needs, they keep moving to us.
How many employees are there at Clear today?
Around 800 folks.
And what's your revenue?
Can't answer that as a private company.
All right. How fast are you growing?
So last year we grew revenue about 70%. This year we are on track to grow revenue another 80%.
How much venture capital have you raised to date?
About 150 million USD.
And what was your last valuation?
I think it's in the public domain, so I don't know if I have to talk about it. But
If it's in the public domain, surely you can tell us.
so something slightly over 500 million USD.
All right. How old are you? 39? Because I think you left the US when? What, 2011? You were a 27-year-old.
38 soon turning 39. Yeah.
There. My research was very close. All right. You're married and you have
A
child.
2-year-old, yes.
What's her name?
Arya.
How many co-founders do you have at Clear?
So, besides me, there are 2 other co-founders, Ankit and Srivatsan.
In 2011, you were in the Bay Area working with startups. You were 27. In 2023, you're in the Bengaluru area and you're almost 39. How's the Archit of today different from the Archit of then?
Yeah, I think the Archit of today is far more patient. I think I've realized everything takes longer in India because the only data point at that time I had was the Bay Area. In the Bay Area, I've seen startups scale up much faster, scale up revenues much faster, scale up to cash flows much faster. And at that era, startups used to be far more frugal. So the boom times had not happened. So the Archit of that time, very like the angry young man, lot of impatience, lot of like to get somewhere faster. I think now it's about getting to the right place at the right pace. So I think the velocity matters a lot more than action and what have you. So I think
Do you have role models?
Yeah, I would say so.
Who are they?
I think from role models perspective, the challenge is obviously to deify individuals because they obviously have deep flaws, but it's great to like learn from afar. So it's more like so one is YC. I think overall Paul Graham's
Y Combinator.
Yeah, the Y Combinator.
You were one of the first. I think you were the first Indian company to go
Get
to
funded
YC
by
in 2014.
14, yes. So I think first I'll start with Paul Graham. I think the overall focus of putting customers and users at the center of making something people want has been the principle and the sort of focus on that part. I think the writings and then in YC in the in-person interaction, and like he's fairly consistent. What he says in his what he writes
What
is
you
what
see
he
is
says.
what you get.
What you see is what you get. Like so overall, that very deep consistency about like how to build a startup, how to remain focused, keeping the main thing. I think those,
I think we all of us just read this massive essay he wrote last month about how to work hard. Huge essay. And with lots of really great insights.
I'm still working through it. I've still not gotten to it. Gotten to the end of it. Like so, but yeah, I mean overall, so PG being one, I would say from very afar, obviously deep inspiration from Bezos. I think what I've seen is some of the principles I've really started to value is I think the discipline with which low margin businesses operate is much higher than businesses with high margins operate. I think, and the loose funding environment obviously drove a lot of profligacy. But we really admire how Amazon has been built, and over there some of the principles are very deep and building for the long term, thinking many quarters out. So his writings in the annual letters and some of the writings, whatever has been made public, has had tremendous impact. So I would say the people who write are the ones who...
That's what's common to Paul Graham and Bezos as well, because they're both known for writing extremely rigorous long form notes about what they believe in.
Right. And obviously the kind of ambition Elon Musk drove, and like shipping rockets and cars and what have you, I think that is obviously phenomenal and inspirational to see.
Not to mention spending $44 billion to buy Twitter and making it X. But
I think it's part of the package. I think you like, as Kanye West says, right? You get all the crazy. You can't get one part of the crazy, which is the creative element and the music. You have to get all the crazy. So
that's well put.
I think you get all the crazy. But I think that's where I meant the principles matter, and I think Peter Thiel, another like 0 to 1, very high quality writings, very strong impact on me personally. So I think the people in the startup ecosystem who have written very clearly and cogently the thoughts have had the maximum amount of impact, and some of it is not relevant for India. And I think that's the part which I'm happy about this podcast. Some of it is highly illogical and irrelevant for India, and the Indian founders have had to adopt and write different playbooks. I don't think they've been published and written very clearly. I think it behooves us founders to put that out, or the Ken to put it out. But I think that part is also critical, which doesn't make sense from the Western world to India.
Is there a culture of writing at Clear?
To a degree, yes. I think it varies from pockets. Like, we are not as consistent, but there is a deep drive that we don't do PowerPoints. We do writings to share our thoughts. We are okay with WIP documents. So it's not like, we have had some folks from Amazon join. I think the rigorous standard of writing is higher over there. What we have realized is that rigor is paralyzing for people not trained in that rigor, because Amazon trains people in that rigor for a while before, and they have a critical mass. We are arriving at that critical mass. So people, some people have gotten to that level of excellence. Some are still evolving, but writing is very core and central to growing at Clear.
There's this saying, right or wrong, that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most amount of time with. Who are these 5 people for you?
Right. So one is my co-founders, Archit and Srivatsan. The other is Rohit, who's the chief business officer. The fourth one would obviously be my wife. And the fifth one would be...
What's her name?
My wife's name is Vinita. Yeah. So, Vinita. And then the fifth one would be, I would say, would be a close friend, Asim, and we hang out, right? And Pratik, like, these are my close friends. So I did want to name people outside work.
As the CEO of both a B2C and a B2B product, which is used at scale, and I mean like millions of customers, how do you study and observe consumer behavior for your products? Or how do you understand consumer behavior?
Right. So on the B2C side, we've been a little more fortunate, and it's been a little bit easier. I'll share why. I think all of us came from a consumer mindset, because that's the first thing we built and that's the thing we understood. And we got into Y Combinator at a formative time. And so what we drilled into the core team, and that core team has largely continued in the consumer side, was you have to talk to users. And that's one of the mantra in YC, right? Like, talk to your users. And when they say talk to your users, it's not like secondhand research, or it's like literally picking up the phone or a Zoom call, get on a call with the customers and talk to them really. So we have a culture of, if a person drops off while using the software, why did they drop off? Extreme curiosity. A product manager in our company will have to do 50 to 100 calls before they're allowed to write their first spec in the consumer side. So I think, and it's really funny, and I'll get to the point where B2C and B2B is vastly different, I think, and we have two different cultures running in the same firm, and it bothers me a lot. but on the B2C side, there is tremendous like ability to listen at scale, just because the original DNA has continued very deeply, and we are very used to when the tax season or the cycle is going on, we call it the tax season, and in that time, hundreds of user calls happen every day, 100 plus user calls, and it'll be driven by folks in sales, it'll be driven by folks in customer support, it'll be driven by product managers, it'll be driven by like we have Slack groups where customer feedback is flowing through and coming into for engineers to read and what have you. So overall, on the consumer side, I think it has served us
Sorry,
well.
before we move on from this, if I were to therefore look at your product development on some kind of a chart, I would see typically like a huge spike in inputs around tax season, which you would probably spend the next 6 to 9 months building out before the next one, and then one huge spike coming. Is that what it would look like?
Precisely. Yeah. So we get so much feedback during that time. So we keep joking. 1 day of tax season is equal to 1 month of non-tax. The intensity, the kind of code we ship, the quality, the rigor, everything goes up dramatically. It's game time, and then the other time feels like practice time. So I think literally it feels like two different cadences. Yeah. So overall, on the B2C side, we do a reasonable job on listening. I think where good versus great happens on B2C is how much ambition do we bring to solving the problem. So I'll give a recent example. This came from listening to customers. So this one user who filed with us last year got a tax notice, and the notice came from the fact that this user misunderstood something in their income and tax statement, and then they coded it, they misclassified it, and then the software did what it could because the user input supersedes supersedes everything. Like we parse all the tax forms and everything, but after a point we give the keys and the card to the user. So the user got a notice and they randomly reached out, and I got curious, and then our team started listening to this user, and we figured the government does one very interesting thing. It matches taxes precisely to your 26AS. Like it matches exactly what the tax amount they know from the ecosystem. But if you go ahead and declare income more than what they have, they will accept that as the truth. So if you ever declare more taxes submitted, they will take the lower value. But if you declare any amount of income, they will take the higher amount of value of what you have declared and what they have. So that was one. So we created an exception engine for that. So this was a relatively easier product solve. But the more interesting product solution which we drove one version of this cycle was, if you get a notice, we'll take care of it. So then we said like, how many notices come? Then we ran a statistical model. We built a prediction engine, and then we have a mismatch score which we couldn't ship in this cycle. We'll ship it next cycle. So this was a paid upgrade. It's a small amount of money. Like it's an assurance, and you can buy it for 99 rupees or something.
It's almost like micro insurance.
Micro, yeah, but like it's not insurance because that's IRDA. And then like the thing that I wanted us to drive, and that is where the ambition comes in, is that we should give it to every user that uses us, no matter what. If you file with us, you have notice prevention built in. So I think then what I've realized is it comes down to how we think of our ambition. And so listening and then marrying it to being very ambitious. So if we can listening, we are pretty good at B2C on the consumer, but marrying it to ambition is something we can keep getting better at. So the difference between good and great, I would say we're good. I want to figure out how we get to great. But on the B2B side, it's a different story altogether, which is the contrast between a B2C org and a B2B org.
What metrics do you obsess over?
So the CSAT and retention.
Customer satisfaction scores.
Yeah, the customer satisfaction and the retention scores matter a lot to us. So our business is a software as a service business, and our business is retention. Our business is customer success. So if we get the users returning to us, and our net revenue retention between last year to this year is healthy and getting healthier, we are on the right track. We may grow slower, faster on new revenue, and it really doesn't matter if users are returning. So that is the core metric, the heart of it. So on the B2C side, we have to look at indicators that whether this user will return or not because of the annual cycle. we are generally best in class when we benchmark even to TurboTax, which is the US one. In the B2B SaaS product, we have real-time data, right? In terms of, because users can stop paying anytime and stop using anytime. So over there we track it obsessively. We put very strong goals on that. So that's really where the business makes or breaks.
Is there a line, perhaps one line that your team dreads hearing from you in reviews, etc.? A phrase or a line?
I'm thinking.
Perhaps we'll come back to
Yeah,
it.
we'll come back to it. Yeah.
What might be the 3 most common adjectives your colleagues use to describe you?
I think one would be customer. I think because everything that I try to do in the company is about the customer. So I think that's number one. The second one would be, and I think the adjectives have changed over time. So now I think it will be about like profitability and long haul. So I think now that's been our, like, but we've been focused on it for the last 3 years. So it's not
Are you profitable today?
not yet, but we, and I can talk about it, we can get to profitability much faster. We have enough balance sheet strength and we are expanding globally. So we are making sure like we don't
So you're making conscious choices to invest in
Right.
market expansion, product expansion.
right. And the third one is now a lot more product obsession. I think I've changed my role over the last 1 year to be the business facing CEO to now product facing CEO. So I think a lot more in that direction.
What brought about that change?
So fundamentally our business grows when we solve more customer problems. And in the beginning, and this is something we have done well, we think of it as a bicycle where both wheels have to turn. One is the GTM wheel and the other is the product wheel. I think
The go-to-market wheel.
go-to-market, yes, GTM being go-to-market. So we have never believed in like if you build it, they will come. Like we believe you have to go out there, get your message across. We've never spent too much money on advertising or marketing. We've been very focused
Because
on,
you've been killers at SEO. I remember you've always been like, back from, I mean, when I knew you originally 2015, 16, etc. I think ClearTax used to kill it in terms of SEO. Is that still true?
yeah, still true. Very focused, very obsessed on that. Like, but I think we never started it from a perspective of we want to be good at SEO. We used to search things around taxes. Nothing used to come up on Google. So we started writing. Then Google started ranking us. So then,
And it's
so-
still uncanny. Just in the last, I think, couple of weeks, there have been multiple times I've hit your website, not while researching for this interview, but while searching for something else related to some tax code or
Oh, really? Okay.
something else, etc. Right? So, I mean, I must compliment you for staying at it.
Yeah, we've been.
And it's not even consumer, I understand, because ClearTax, there would be a bunch of these consumerish tax things that came out. These were all just, I think, slightly more GST-ish. So
Yeah.
it's quite...
Yeah, so I think we've always believed that a GTM should be a strength. So we've invested also on it, and I was focusing over there a lot more. What I figured was and COVID sucked at this, like we did not have the rituals and practices to be very, very excellent in shipping things when we were all remote. I think we struggled with it, especially to be enterprise grade. I think consumer overall we were fine, but enterprise grade stuff for B2B, and that's where the listening at scale at B2B, I think we can get much better, and we are getting better. But and that's why we are now back to work from office. I think we didn't have
5 days a week?
Yeah, all 5 days a week. We didn't have the rituals and the practices to be excellent at work collaborating remotely. So what that meant was the products that were coming out were missing the mark somehow. Like they were okay, and I think
Not crafted.
not crafted. Like, and so I think like sort of like DNA wise, it hurts us when our products are not crafted well. because I think our teams, like, we are not in a sexy space, right? Like teams don't, individuals who choose to join us make a very deliberate choice to join us. So people who join us are generally, if I had to go, like, are sincere, earnest folks, like not like flashy folks who are in our company for the wrong reason. Generally, we have had like a fairly consistent, earnest and sincere culture. So what that meant is that they were trying to do their best, but we still miss the mark here or there. So what I realized was the sort of craft focused taste, creating the right space, and sometimes the pressure to hit a prototype to the market, but sometimes creating the space for the team to, and that those judgment calls I started getting involved a lot more, and then like personally setting up the team for success and spending that time. So I think that transformation is helping a lot.
Talking about people, is there anything that you've changed your mind when it comes to managing people over time?
Oh, this is a very big topic for me, like a whole lot. I think I've gone from being a very crappy leader, I think, to being at least consciously aware that every day I have to come into work and make it better. I feel we made a lot of initial mistakes. I feel like
Why did you consider yourself a crappy leader earlier on?
I think, like, in hindsight, I know I was now
Of course.
later, not in foresight.
No, but I think I'm talking about that self-awareness. Like,
Right.
what do you know now about the past you, which you now want to change?
Right. So one is like actively managing people's growth within Clear. I think we never thought about it, and so consequently, then actions did not happen. Where I think there were a bunch of folks who've trusted us, and fortunately, some of them have stuck around and they've grown with us. But there have been patches where we have not grown as a company, like due to whatever factors, like whether it was execution, macro, what have you. In those junctures, people can leave, and some people did leave, some people chose to stay. Now, the people who chose to stay despite like my sometimes misguided leadership and what have you. And I think over there now we are far more intentional.
So if I were kind of blunt, you're saying that they chose to stay despite you, not because of you. And the shift that you want to make now is to make sure that more people are staying
So I'm
through
giving
the hard
myself
times
the
as well.
harshest score I can.
Of course, I think as CEOs, that's and founders especially, that's
So,
always you hold yourself up to the highest standard.
yeah, so over here, I would say, like, we could have, like, when I look back, we could have done a much better job, like being intentional in giving people different roles, offering more of us to them, being more.
Can I ask you to be more specific? Because I mean, the original question was, what have you changed your mind about managing people? So
Right. So the big things is, I think a few things which come with scale, I don't worry about them too much. Like going from a 3 people company to a 800 people or at peak 1,000 people company, the organizing teams, setting up teams, I think over there it is all learned capabilities, learned skills. So I think over there I'm not too worried. I think we made the mistakes which all growth stage startups go through, not too bad. Like, I think the part where intentional about these are our people, we have to focus on their careers, their success, figure out ways to grow them, and if they are bringing like the right like if they're bringing the right attitude, how do we partner with them till it hurts? Mindset shift is what I'm talking about. Like, I think that mindset shifted for me like about a few years ago, but I wish it had shifted very early on.
So is it, I'm still not sure that I fully understand, but are you essentially saying that you shouldn't leave the career growth of your best people only to them, but you need to have like a very strong plan yourself also to partner them and to give them a career? Is that what you're hinting at?
That's one part. I think that's not
Could you
like the
then perhaps clarify?
Yeah, I think like a more recent example for, like, let me quantify it, right? Like a more recent example is for 20 folks right now, we've invested in leadership coaching, for example, recently. Now, it's not functional. It's about them becoming more self-aware, them discovering their true strengths and doubling down on those strengths, and and answering some very deep questions about themselves. So now this may seem very like
Someone called it therapy for executive leaders.
yeah, exactly. So this may seem very soft and what have you, but from our perspective, we are saying like we want to create high performance teams, and high performance teams need to be called out, and there needs to be a culture of coaching them. And so external coaching good, internal coaching, now we run very deep programs. Some teams are very good at it now, some teams kind of suck, so we are asking everybody to raise bar. Third example would be our teams having enough confrontations. What we realized is to grow, we have to give critical feedback as well. So it's not just the career growth element. The career growth element is the output of many inputs going right. So I think the first one is being very intentional that people matter, and we will invest behind our people. And that is the biggest shift that I have made, but now I have to make the entire company make, and pockets of it have gotten there, pockets of it have to get there. So, but getting to that is very, very important. And I think we, like simple examples, right? Like, so I want to give more color and flavor. I think we bootstrapped for 4 years, right? And till Y Combinator funding happened, we had zero external validation. So I think
So just to be clear, you were just losing money for the first, because when you say bootstrap, and you were also running ClearTax, the consumer facing site, and you weren't like, there wasn't a lot of revenue coming in back then, right?
So
Because
we were charging something to some users. So
all right.
like, so we were getting some revenue, but
so there was some revenue coming in, but you were still burning money for the first 4 years.
Yeah. So we had like, I mean, some savings I had from the Bay Area, and like I think basically we were living on a shoestring budget, and and like we were obviously like we were obviously not in a good financial situation as a company at that time, right? So, but coming back, right, like for the first 4 years, no external validation. So all validation came from doing right by customers, internal validation, and what have you. Now, what I did not give importance to and understand at all, because my work life was like my professional work was very few years, so I hadn't gotten to that, like that we need to appreciate people when they do something right, create the right environment where people feel part of the community, part of the group. When they get something right, they sort of feel that connection and the good. And so a lot of basics, right? Connection, valuing people, appreciating them, the practice of gratitude, the confrontations necessary to give tough but necessary feedback, investing in people's growth, identifying strengths and weaknesses. A lot of these investments were never made. So I feel the overall challenge of going from 3 people to 1,000 people, I mean, that like is a journey filled with managerial mistakes, which every first time founder makes. And I've made...
And all organizations must go through their own respective learnings in that part.
Right. So I'm not too stressed on that part. I think just taking customer obsession along with the people obsession, employee obsession would have been awesome. I think that's one thing which, like, for example, Y Combinator doesn't talk about. Like, and if they start inculcating those practices and habits to early stage founders, that'd be great. Because if you can make the customer topic top of mind, make the people topic also top of mind, and I think founders are smart, resultant tree will grow differently and it'll be fine.
You met your co-founders Ankit and Srivatsan at a hackathon that you organized for Paytm in 2011. What was that hackathon?
Yeah, so I'd moved back from the Bay Area, and in the Bay Area, to meet new people there, like you can go to hackathons, and that is how pre-boom times, like serious engineers who were startup oriented would meet and what have you. So then I wanted to do a hackathon so that I can, and Delhi NCR was particularly dead at that time. Like there was no startups there. So then I reached out to Google, and Google said they can sponsor it. And then I had to look for a space because there were not co-working spaces, didn't exist. WeWork did not exist at that time. So then I pinged a few people, and then they said like Vijay of Paytm has will offer you the space at his Noida office, and they're very nice people, and so on and so forth. So then they said they'll sponsor the food and stuff, and they said, okay, we'll host it there because at Google I think I had to take some approval for their offices and what have you. I obviously didn't have any office. I was just working out of my parents' house in Delhi. So and then then Shivatsan and Ankit showed up to that hackathon, and then we got talking. So that's how the relationship blossomed. I think it was super fun to meet them, and Ankit was the best programmer I knew, and then Shivatsan was a very prolific designer, very quick, and so I thought like these guys are awesome. So that's how we got.
Great. Your father is a chartered accountant, and it was, I understand, through him that the original idea of focusing on the tax space came about, because he felt that there were a lot of problems for consumers and businesses. I mean, that was 2011. What are the problems of consumers and businesses of today that you see, and when you compare them to what you thought they would be in 2011, what's the difference?
Right. So I think that is a journey filled with learnings. So 2011, we didn't start a company, we launched a product. And in my mind,
what's the difference?
We were just creating a product which we thought will be useful to somebody. We weren't even sure, is this a company? We didn't even know what is a company. We hadn't incorporated one. I think we incorporated one finally because we thought like, okay, so we have to give out salaries at some point and so on and so forth. So I think, and then somebody told us like, you'll have to clean up and put intellectual property into that company. Okay, we didn't even know those words. So I think the key thing was we were building a product, and then the focus was on craftsmanship and user impact, and not on like, hey, we have a startup here. So I think that's how we got started. The evolution has been a deep understanding of like customer needs which are like, which matter and which can eventually lead to either monetization or lead to some so I think the dance of not just creating something which is nice and maybe you give out for free kind of thing, to now creating something which is valuable. You can probably charge for it directly or indirectly, and then like marrying to purpose and meaning. So for example, we'll never build trading software. We think like the house wins and customers lose money. Our motto is simplifying financial lives. We have to create economic value and so on and so forth. So for us, like there was always a purpose driven thing, and that continues. So when we evaluate our roadmaps and our futures and our customer needs, we obviously can go in directions which are not which serve a customer need, but eventually it does not add to the world. So those we don't prosecute on. But now when we measure something, we are, for example, we figured like in India, for example, I have a contra SaaS thesis. What do I mean by that is Indian labor continues to be cheap. White collar, high quality labor continues to be cheap and will be cheap for the next 10 years. So the SaaS you build in India must be something that humans can't do. If they can do it, like you can't build a really meaningful company.
So it's software versus human arbitrage, you're saying?
Yeah, the humans are like finance jobs even are very high quality jobs in this country. Like because so very high quality talent works in finance. In the first world, if you're a very high quality thinker, they'll move you to a business role or a product role or a more. They'll not keep you in the back office. They'll firmly move you to a more higher impact role. I've seen this time and again in the first world. But in the third world, you will you can have a very nice finance job and what have you, because there's talent like in all, like we are 1.4 billion people. So I think the thesis I have is just coming back, sorry, to bring
the contra thesis.
The contra thesis is in India you have to do things which like the software is the last resort. Only then can you monetize it. Only then can you make real money out of it. So my view has become like,
so you're saying, unlike other countries,
First
people
world
don't
countries.
use first world countries. People don't use software simply because it's cheaper and more efficient. You're saying that may not always be true in
It's
India.
not true at all, because the per
Give me an
capita,
example from your space, perhaps.
like, okay, if you talk about GST and what have you, right? Our software is about 10x better than using humans and Excel. But I mean, like, if you look at the government portal versus us, like, we are 10x better. The people don't value time as much, like on the
That's a
individual
peculiar
side.
Indian affliction, right?
I
That
think
we
per
don't
capita,
attach a
per capita
value.
GDP
Yeah.
matters, right? Like, in the countries we are now heading into, the per capita GDP is 50,000 USD, right? India is like 2,600 or 700, right? So it really matters, right? Like, even if the median accountant will make like 4.5 lakh rupees, so then the software, if it's 7 lakh rupees, these things matter to the customer in that sense. They are like, I will not cut a headcount for this. And so in the US or in the first world countries, when you sell SaaS, they can prevent one headcount and that justifies the SaaS fee. Over here, that does not justify the SaaS fee. So I think I don't want to go into pricing, which is a very deep topic.
No, so thus, what is so therefore, like,
So SaaS in India has to be something which humans possibly can't do. If you're running a transaction-rich platform, or you're doing the answering the first original question, customer needs, in my mind, for example, bringing access to capital, doing something in financial services really adds value. And that evolution has happened when for example, we built software for small businesses. We realized after talking to enough businesses, even though GST was coming, even though e-invoicing is necessary and so on and so forth, our now clear thesis is the problems to solve are on the financial side, is how do they get access to better working capital, or how do they solve their business working capital needs or business loans need. On the other side, like, how do they generate more business demand and what have you. Software, even if you make the best quality software which works seamlessly on the smartphone, the addressable opportunity for the next 5 years is very small. It'll evolve and it'll get big as the GDP grows, as the per capita GDP grows.
So you're saying that your software, therefore, and most software in the space are just a means to an end, and they themselves will not become significant revenue drivers on their own.
Yeah, so when I say significant, I'm talking about 1,000 crores going to 5,000 crores
Got
kind
it.
of like levels, right? Like, I'm really talking about, like, we are talking about like being in the top 100 software SaaS companies in the world, right? Not
Okay. Isn't there like a parallel that you see between your B2C initial thinking and your B2B initial thinking as well? Because in B2C also, you started out saying, look, these customers are not going to pay. We'll figure out a way.
B2B, we went the other way, right? We charged day zero. And B2B, we didn't.
But you'll still make a lot of money from them through other things, like, for example, helping them access loans, working capital, etc.
Eventually, yes, but we have not predicated the company on it. So we on the B2B side, since we had the learning from B2C, we started with we started with one module, and we've now expanded to 7 modules. So we were never at a place where, okay, this one module is make or break. The government innovation can destabilize the business. So there are now 7 modules, software modules.
And what are these modules? Like different functionalities?
Different problem spaces. So one is for GST, which is generally referred to as indirect tax. Then there is TDS and payroll parts of the TDS, like, which are direct taxes. So when you pay your employees or vendors, that part. Another example is electronic invoicing and way bills, when your trucks move, when your invoices move. Another example is tax credit management. Now we have a new supply chain software which helps businesses do the digitization of the invoice to all the way to paying their vendors, matching with purchase orders, creating
And
purchase
these are
orders.
all modules within your offering. So depending
Within
on
the
which
Clear
modules.
Finance Cloud. Yeah, so we call it the Clear Finance Cloud. And then in that, like, you have the supply chain offering. Then we bought a company for MCA and company secretarial things. So you have to report a bunch of things every board meeting, like, you have to sign a bunch of documents for your board meeting. You have to get the board meeting onto the company secretary has to do a bunch of things. So we digitized all that. Then we bought a company for discounting, which is the financial services opportunity that comes next. Then we took this software global to Saudi now.
Which was my next question.
Yeah.
I mean, why is Why Saudi Arabia? I mean, how did you arrive at the choice of that country when you were looking to expand beyond India?
So we have 5 or 6 qualifying criteria on which we evaluate a country going to electronic invoicing. If we find 5 out of the 6 parameters to be true, then we enter that country. Now, it so happened that Saudi passed all the 5 criteria. Saudi actually passed 6. So then it became clear to us that we have to enter. And then it was a very unclear, contrarian, unclear bet, because our original hypothesis was that for SaaS we have to go to the US, and that's where nirvana lies, and blah blah blah. And then we discovered that our technology and at the scale we manage and what we do is mature, and we can serve Saudi customers well. So now as we speak, we have the largest out of the top 10 retailers. We have probably the 8 of the top 10 on our platform.
In Saudi Arabia.
We have one of the largest telco companies as our customers. We have the largest petroleum companies, largest wholesalers. So I mean, it's getting very interesting. We are serving some of the very marquee logos in Saudi. So I think the selection criteria worked out really well. So, but we obviously had a lot of misgivings because we had a lot of friends out in UAE, like Dubai. Like we had enough stories of Indians going there, and there was a reference network and what have you. Saudi was very opaque. We had to literally fly in, meet a lot of folks, build connects, understand what it takes. There were no other SaaS companies, no Indian SaaS company we know which has presence in Saudi. We couldn't lean on any playbook. We reached out to a bunch of SaaS founders. Everybody had, and because we would like Google, okay, India SaaS going to Middle East, and we'd talk to them, and it'll turn out like they opened a small thing in Middle East in Dubai, and it didn't go anywhere, and then they had either gone to the EU or the US, and it wasn't a serious thing. Only Zoho had a serious thing, but Zoho's playbooks are very mature, very different scale and maturity than us. So we couldn't emulate them at all because the playbooks don't work. They are SMB, we are enterprise. So I think so that execution was filled with a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity, but we got it done. So pretty happy
How
about
long ago did you enter Saudi Arabia?
2 years ago. That was the start.
How many people does it? I mean, asking as someone who doesn't know this much, but doesn't working in the space that you are mean having a lot of deep domain knowledge about the tax codes, etc., and all this? Do you have a lot of people working for you in Saudi Arabia who translate that Saudi tax codes, etc., into your software?
Yeah, we have to be good at like understanding the tax code which is published in Arabic. We have to understand the law fully. We have to get certifications in that country. We have to have data residency in that country. We have to have registered entity in that country. We need approvals from all the authorities. So there's a lot of regulatory work that we have to go through. We have to understand the full law. We become the experts on their law, advising them on what to do. And the finance teams of those countries come look at us as experts to drive their compliance in their country. And so that's the transformation we do. So
when you took this to your board saying that you wanted to go to Saudi Arabia, what was the reaction?
I think they had no reaction. I think they probably did not understand anything at that time.
So how did you get it past them? By not spending a lot on the expansion? How did you?
I think the board operates with us, like we have been fortunate, like the board operates with a lot of trust with us. So I think over there, I think that's number one. Second, I think we didn't commit too many dollars. So I think like if it's a small bet, like then the boards are like, why stop the team and the CEO from doing something? The third thing is I think the plan was communicated very well. Like these are the risks, this is the opportunity. We are trying something. It's a bet. If it fails, it's a write-off. If it works, then you have a business which has gone global. So I think from a board perspective, it was a no-brainer, to be honest. I don't think any sane board member in any reasonable company would have said no to it.
Does Clear have a North Star goal?
So right now we have put a goal for profitability, but that's like a short-term goal. But it's an important goal because we feel that independence, that the company is long-term sustainable, matters to us. So, but
Do you get questions from employees as to why profitability is such an important goal for the organization?
100%. Like people ask that question. I think the environment has changed so much that the question is no longer coming
Valuation.
so often, because like we've had this goal to monetize ourselves and get to real revenues for the last 3 years. So I think we sort of uh, figured, I don't know what spidey sense in the core team figured that this is not sustainable, the thing that is happening, and our value and valuation and the like and what have you. So 3.5 years ago we started prioritizing that we have to get to revenues, real revenues and real ARR, real cash, and cash flow. So overall, and I'm a big believer in cash flow. So like we used to do cash based accounting for a long time, even though we run other people's accrual accounting methodology. So basically, that the and we wanted cash flow at scale, not profitability with small numbers and small, because we continue to expand globally. We have 3 more outposts now, figuring out how to go into more countries and what have you. So I think profitability but at scale is important. So that's like an initial milestone. The North Star though is about, I think it's cliched, but North Star is about the, like, on the business B2B side, we want to create a B2B network where finance teams are able to come and get compliant, get working capital. And these are the 2 major themes that we have. So on the North Star side, the India ambition was like build the B2B network, get compliant, get cash, get working capital. We have now expanded the ambition to be global because we think like the B2B network is a global construct and we'll take the compliance plus working capital to a global level.
What do you think about when it comes to motivating employees via goals or metrics? Does it work? What's your style at Clear?
So that has seen significant evolution. I think when we started, we were fairly immature about putting a North Star goal, which was ambitious, but with no supporting how. And what that would lead is to, and generally, like all startups, we had a very young team. So we would sign up to goals without any kind of a plan. And
Stretch goals.
just
Big, hairy, audacious
big goal,
goals.
and like with no operating plan and no rigor on how to get there. I think we started the vocabulary of an annual operating plan and how to get there, and we obviously have gotten better at it. But what we have over time evolved towards, and something which is very positive now, which I've personally tried to nurture a lot more, is what set of input initiatives change the business materially into a more stronger business. So the profitability goal is also linked here because, like, I'll give an example, right? When we started, we were not enterprise SaaS on the B2B journey. We were, I would say at best SMB SaaS. We were serving small chartered accountants, and enterprises would come to us who would see that these guys have built something valuable and they would extract technology out of us. And then we would not understand truly what being enterprise meant. And so that evolution, for example.
What does that mean? They would extract technology out of us?
They would buy our licenses and subscription, and then they would tell us that you have something more valuable, turn it more valuable, like this kind of.
Oh, so you're saying that they were underpaying you for the value that they were getting out of your platform?
No, I think they saw potential in us, and then we put out an enterprise sales team, and then they would buy from us despite us not having enterprise DNA and creds and enterprise credentials and enterprise capabilities. They would see potential in our technology, and then they would say, okay, we'll buy from you. I think we were ambitious enough to go into enterprise doors, but we didn't have the right technology which would like scale at that at that level. We acquired very large logos, and then we were sometimes not able to keep up the servers running. And in the beginning, we thought these are nice problems to have. We just scale it. But what we realized is it was also a very mindset transformation for the entire company, going from a very consumer DNA to a very enterprise DNA, putting the customer onboarding, success, integrations, and what have you. So I'll give an example. Right now, we are driving a integrations project, technology project, which once we succeed in here, we can go live with almost all of our technology without the customer having to tweak things. We've created an intermediary middleware layer where the customer can, it runs with configuration and not customization. So that is a very long running project. Like we have been funding it for 9 months. We've never had the patience to do these kind of things early in our, like I would say in the first 8 years, right? Like the
To be fair, you need to be of a certain scale and stage in the organization to be able to make these kind of bets as well, right? In your early stages, perhaps
I
never have the
luxury.
either luxury, capital, time, space to be able to do these things.
Right. So I'm just saying, like, when you ask the goals and metrics question, now I think as I said, the company has evolved that putting goals is necessary. Otherwise, like, you never can have a ambition going, because how do you measure? Metrics, like we've slowly automated a bunch of things. Now we have dashboards where people can go look up. Nobody has to generate a report and what have you. I don't think that has changed the company. I think this inputs focus has changed the company. I think that can arrive in companies even when they're smaller. The input initiative can be 2 weeks long or a month long or a quarter long. But if the inputs are going right and in the right direction.
So you're focusing on input excellence rather than outcomes first.
Inputs and outcomes, not outputs. Like not like revenue can...
Give me an example of an input.
So this integration project, for example, is one example, like where 9 months of investment, now we are starting to see the first set of customers go live. Now, another example is like building a prototype, letting it marinate with customers, and not in the beginning right away start to sell it to everyone and so on and so forth. So some bit of maturity, but a lot more inputs have to move, a lot more initiatives have to go right, and a lot less why did this revenue number not happen in the projected time that it needed to happen.
What is it that you feel you add most value to Clear as its CEO?
I
Could
think
be more than one things.
Yeah, I think one is ambition. I think I'm personally not satisfied like easily or at all, like kind of thing. I think there's a deep drive to build something from India, which is very important to A, the Indian economy, B, globally relevant. I think that desire is on a, like, building an important company. So that is number one. Second is, I see I'm that Bania family, like the person, right? Like, so I grew up in a family of traders, shopkeepers. My father was the first professional. Everybody else barely finished school or college in his generation. I think everybody in our generation was well educated by them. So what I saw was, but like obviously a lot of my cousins work in the same businesses, and some have done well, some have not done so well in the family businesses, and so on and so forth. What I saw firsthand was, and that has been a core driver for me personally, was like we have to build something for small businesses, medium businesses in this country to scale. And then, and on the Indian consumer side, like there has been a deep frustration with how people manage money, because we see the final output. So over there, the two axes of technology and financial access is something we want really to create impact on. India especially. I think we are a very poor country, emerging, but like, and the fact of the matter is, like, we will only grow when businesses grow. And to me, that is now a very important part of our mission, that how do we go from only collateral to information powering the economy? Because if a business is doing well, and that can be evidenced from cash flows, invoices, GST, and so on and so forth. And obviously the government is trying what they are trying. But then what is our role in enabling and powering that? is something I find very important. So these are the two parts of the ambition that I bring. I think the other parts will be around customer obsession, around uh, really understanding what it takes to build software. I think software is a mix of science and art. I don't think it is pure science. So I think those would be the three things I bring.
You're 800 plus people, you've been around for since 2011, so you've obviously done a lot of hiring, and I'm sure hiring is one of the things that you continue to spend a lot of time on. Do you have any heuristics for spotting talented people when you're meeting them, or which you then perhaps rely on to reach out and ask if they would like? How do you spot talented people? What are their tells?
Yeah, so a few characteristics are, and it depends on I think the level. So I think it varies from junior, like younger people early in their careers, to senior folks late in their career. But I think one common thread is like a deep passion for their craft. I think. I think like that is a common thread that I've seen talented people who we would like to work with, that they are very focused on being or heading towards excellence on what they want to put out in the world. So I feel like whoever gets lazy in that element, like of putting in the work and staying on top of their game, I think so. I think that has been one thread, right? Like they like working for and improving themselves and they challenge themselves and what have you. So that's number one. Number two is, which I have found like ridiculous and like ridiculously good signal, is very high levels of curiosity. And not just like the early curiosity of exploring a new domain, not like the butterfly kind of curiosity, but very deep curiosity to go deep on how do things work. So I've seen like that, because it's the curiosity which drives a lot of understanding and uncovering where does the fault line lie, where does the greatness lie. And the third one is raising the bar and like sort of not settling, sort of that
Would be
one plus.
related to the first one itself, passion for excellence. And
Yeah, but like I think the third one is more about like when outcomes happen for themselves and their teams, like they're not satisfied with early baseline. Like they're always asking the question, what does good to great look like? What does, so that
ambition in that sense.
that ambition, that like and that hunger to. So I think like these 2-3 are really relevant. I've seen like all the other signals of how they articulate, how they like, are they introverted, understated, overstated, flamboyant. All of those are noise, not signal. Like I've figured I've now anti-patterns on all of these three. I don't have anti-patterns.
And when you are interviewing, do you have any recurring or favorite open-ended questions that you ask people to get the conversation going, or to see what their responses are?
Right. A couple of standard-ish questions that I look at is, one is diving deep on the team that they like. Now as I interview people, I have to hire folks at least around me who are good at managing and scaling teams. So I think I ask the team question a lot. To a younger person, I will not.
What kind of a open-ended team question would you ask?
Like generally, what kind of a team did you inherit? So I'll get a sense of how much agency they have, and like what do they really talk about. Then I'll say, was it a team or a B team or a C team? Like I've not defined whether it's a team, B team, or a C team. When you left, what kind of a team did you leave it? Like what was the evolution of the team like? How did the team evolve? How did you evolve? What was the most challenging? So like
So there's a lot of self-awareness also built into these questions of their own.
Yeah, so
Whether they
self-awareness.
think of it as A or B, whether they think of the impact that they had as A or B, etc. also.
And like, how intentional were they in building their teams? How intentional were they in scaling the teams? What were the core challenges? Do they acknowledge the core challenges? And like, do they coast, not coast? What did they institutionalize? What did they not? And so on and so forth. So this is one question. The other one, like, which is usually thrown up interesting answers, what has failure looked like in like over the last, let's say, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, like whatever horizon we decide to dive deep on failure. What did failure look like? And that brings in a more sense of that self-awareness, the humility to look at mistakes. Otherwise it's sometimes hubris or like too much positioning. And I think the stepping back and observing, so how observational are they? Can they figure out what mistakes look like, and so on and so forth.
Sorry, I've been meaning to ask you this. You mentioned your leadership team working with coaches. Do you work with a leadership coach as well?
So the same coach, like we work on certain areas. So
And without going into specifics, what changed in you since you started working with a coach?
So couple of things. One was really crystally defining what does success look like. This, like for example, the horizon we work in is a quarter, and we can dial it up or dial it down depending on the kind of project. But what does success look like this quarter? Like defining it very sharply, helping the teams and individuals visualize it was a big change. Earlier I would leave it fuzzy for the person. I may have a success visualization or I may have not, like depending on the problem. If I'm not close to it, I may have not even thought about the question. But just sharpening that question and that visualization and writing it together, the person usually writes it and I can obviously give feedback, but that person deciding what success for their group or them as an individual contributor and them as a people manager or the team looks like has really helped. Has really helped. So this one is, it's like basically feels very obvious, but like I was not doing it enough. I think I've not seen coaches do anything which is not very obvious, but this one was like obvious and good. I think the other one was again focused on people. Like I don't share enough. Like as a person, generally introverted, so I have no trouble sharing. It's just introverted, so it doesn't strike me that I have to share what am I thinking, what are we going through, and what do we need to change, or where do we need to. So I think these two would be the ones which I am working on.
How do you keep active?
So that is very high priority to me because I feel
I asked because I noticed that you're still as fit today as I remember you back from 2016 or so.
awesome. Okay, so the benchmark is is kept. So that's personally very important to me because I feel like and like this is a funny story. I moved to the US in after graduating from the IIT at Guwahati, and then went to Madison. And then I saw like people were extremely fit, right? Like people running around, people playing a lot of sports. And so I started playing sports. I started like being much more active. And then I realized that this is the way of life. Like it's not something that you do, and this is not something that is. So then I really incorporated that. Like for the first few years after moving to India, I used to play ultimate frisbee very regularly. But after the COVID and the kid, I think really got screwed up. But I didn't have any bandwidth to now go play and train with a team. So instead, like I have a rowing machine. I row, and like I enjoy running. I enjoy like if I can, I'll lift some weights, and over there, like it's on and off, because sometimes if I'm not consistent, like that's a consistency game. I keep trying to do yoga like on and off, but basically I'll try to show up to do something 4 times a week. That something could be just a brisk walk, like if I'm having a day where I'm not able to push myself, or if I'm able to push, I'll try to do what I can. So, but it's personally a very important value. I keep sharing that to the team, that look, I mean, this is a long term game. The stamina needed to perform at high levels, the physical game, the mental game, both are needed. So I'm a believer on like the yoga style or what have you. The sports part is painful, because I wish there was less traffic so I could get somewhere to play.
You and me and every Bangalorean who's listening to this podcast. How's Archit the father different from Archit the CEO?
I think fatherhood is very new to me. I have a 2-year-old. I think I'm learning to switch off from work when I'm with Arya. Like I personally struggle a lot to switch off. So over there, for example, I did a recent experiment. I'll share that before so like me and the baby, we went to my parents live in Delhi, and so basically we decided like just me and the baby will fly, go meet the grandparents, spend a day or two, and then fly back, and we'll give a break to my wife.
So it was about Vinita trusting you to get all
So
of this done.
I think that's half the equation. The other half was like me checking if I'm like I can be fully present, and I'm like capable of like being a caregiver when, like, because I think over there I'm fortunate. My wife pulls a lot of, like, I think it's 80% her, 20% me. So I'm trying to get better off at being more present. And so I think like I really enjoy the time that I spend with the baby. I think it's just how more present can I be, how because at work I'm fairly present. I don't check out. I'm fairly on. So how do I bring the same level of like and also like it's a lot of fun to play, and so that fun element, like, keep bringing it back. Like I think so that's the difference.
What do your weekends look like?
So now I don't work weekends. That's changed after the baby, and it's the changes like more 7-8 months ago, not even like couple of years. So over there, what I try to do is fit as much as I can during the 5 days. Saturday and Sunday, generally the goal is just to spend time with the family. We have a ritual. Sunday morning we'll head to Kaban, walk for 2.5-3 hours as much as we can. We'll we'll try to talk like whatever we wanted to catch up on during the week and kept getting postponed for some reason. Then the other part is like the baby, like she's walking now, so if she walks like then sometime or in the stroller or what have you, and then I think generally just the get like maybe 10,000-15,000 steps in, sit and have like a little bit of a picnic, get out in the nature. So for me personally, walking in nature is very important, and to me I get very cranky if I'm not heading into nature. So like this sort of solves for both purposes. I need to be outdoors. I need to like so that the only way I can do it is either Kaban Park or Lal Bagh. Like these are the only two places I find enough that I don't like loop around fast enough that my brain is like, this is fake. This is fake. I need a little more. So I like whenever I travel, I try to find hikes. Like 5 to 5 hours hikes are okay with me. Like so that element is very important to me.
Are there things that you do that others might find quirky?
You'll have to define quirky. Otherwise,
It's fine if you can't, if it doesn't strike you something as quirky, then it probably isn't. How would you rate your performance as a CEO and as a parent on a scale of 1 to 10?
So parent, 7 on 10. CEO, 6 on 10.
I'm curious, why do you rate yourself as a 6 on 10 as CEO?
I think the kind of talent we have, the kind of opportunity we have, we could have prosecuted it much faster, much deeper. So as a founder, I feel I could have done more. But on the other hand, me and my core team, we were looking at the deck we had built for Series B. We are only 9 months behind. So of our projected target from 4 years ago. So I'm thinking not so bad.
6 out of 10 times when you're out, what do you end up ordering to eat?
So that's the problem. Like I do stress eat, and sugar is the stress eating. So this is the thing I'm trying to manage and learn to manage. Earlier, my metabolism rate was high enough that it didn't matter. Now it is slowing
Now
down.
you're 1 year away from turning 40.
Yeah, screw that. Like so earlier it didn't matter at all what I ate. Like now it does. So like so if like ice cream or like some mithai, like North Indian mithais, like whatever. Like so I think that would be the go-to like indulgence. Now I'm trying to be a little more
All right.
better at it, but the stress eating stuff. Yeah.
I also read somewhere that you were into cooking or are into cooking, and during the pandemic you got into it, you tried sourdough, etc. Are you still cooking?
Not as much, but like I think the pandemic was a special time. Now I do on some Saturdays or Sundays. I'll make a Italian veggie bake. Like that's like my signature recipe now. Wherever like a few friends are over or the family, like it's a very easy recipe. Like just cut up a bunch of veggies and season them well with a few things, and then stick them in the oven. So it's a very lazy but nice Sunday afternoon kind of a recipe.
What does personal time for you look like, which is yours?
So primarily reading.
What do you read?
Could be anything, fiction or non-fiction. I've always enjoyed reading.
Physical books or Kindle, iPad?
So Kindle, iPad for books which are not easily available for a Kindle for most part, like not available in India, or the form factor if I'm traveling or if I have a break, or the other part now more recently is baby will fall asleep and then I can't like switch on the light, so I'll read on the Kindle because it's like, but like PG Woodhouse for like one of my favorite authors, and then science fiction genres, science fiction genre very wide, and then non-fiction could be business stuff or could be like deeper books which like earlier I would not appreciate, now I've started to.
Good. And what does focus mode look like for you at work?
Like two kinds of, one is writing long form, so I think really helps structure thoughts, and the other one is like whiteboard where we are huddling trying to solve, like 2-3 people are trying to solve a tough problem, can't figure out initially, or the long form writing is not gotten to the answer, then trading thoughts, breaking it down, making like trying with each other, like how do we get past this. Yeah.
Good. On a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you with life?
9 on 10 maybe.
Which mornings of the week do you look forward to the most?
Fairly neutral. Like I think every day is pretty good. Like I think 9 on 10 and every day being consistent is like correlated.
What was the last thing you really geeked out over?
Coffee. So I never drank coffee till the baby was born. Zero. Like I used to drink green tea and chai sometimes, right? Like, and so after the baby was born, I discovered, okay, the baby wakes up every 2 hours. I have not slept, and there were days in the office where I would be like what did this guy say? Like, because my brain, my brain would really shut off. Like somebody was talking to me, and like I've not had much sleep, and I think in the 20s it was fine. Now in late 30s it's not okay at all with no sleep. So then I said, okay, I'll try coffee. And one of my co-founders, Ankit, is a big coffee nut, and he had like all sorts of like these aeropresses and this pour overs, and so he said, man, you should probably drink some coffee, because there was like I would fall off asleep in a conference room when people are like talking about something. So uh, then he gave me beans, then he gave me some like an aeropress, and so I got into it, and it was super fun. Like I was like, okay, I should have discovered coffee.
What's
earlier.
your favorite mode of coffee preparation?
Right now I'm geeking out on pour overs and different grind sizes, and different beans and different temperatures. So pour overs are a little more fun, but aeropresses are the ones where I'm more consistently good coffee. But pour overs are a lot more fun.
Do you have an internal or external nickname which reflects something about your personality?
No personality orientation. I think my mother has always called me Archie, not Archit. And
If you could have a say in a nickname which reflects who you are, is there something like that?
so my college Age of Empires gaming name was Maverick. So I used to think of myself as Maverick. So, but it's a very Top Gun inspired. Yeah.
Maverick is a great nickname to end this podcast with. Thank you so much for your time, Archit. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you, Rohin. It was super fun.